At the start of the episode, we see Sang-woo visiting Ryo in the US. As she leads him to her dorm, she reassures him that no one else is there, and he should relax. Sang-woo, hesitant, begins to leave. But Ryo convinces him to stay, offering him a free treat in her room. The next morning, Sang-woo wakes up to find Ryo asleep on the floor. He gently covers her with a blanket, gazing at her fondly, wondering aloud, "What do you think I came to the US for?" Suddenly, Sang-woo notices a message on Ryo's phone from someone named Brian, asking about their date. Ryo wakes up, and Sang-woo asks, "Who's Brian?" Ryo casually replies, "Oh, that's my boyfriend," leaving Sang-woo visibly hurt. She then suggests introducing them, praising Brian as a great guy. In a quick shift to the present, Ryo helps Sang-woo with some office supplies. As they work, a sudden mishap causes her to fall into his arms. Sang-woo teases her, calling her a habitual offender for always getting too close. Ryo denies it, but Sang-woo brings up an earlier incident where she hugged him while locking the door, leaving her speechless. Later, as Ryo cooks, Sang-woo offers to help, but she brushes him off, saying, "What do you know about cooking?" When Sang-woo finally tastes the food, he's amazed and tries to guess the secret ingredient. But his hunger takes over, and he devours the meal, joking that his compliments are probably just because he was starving. Ryo, clearly pleased, teases, "Maybe I should throw you off a mountain," but her smile shows she's happy that he enjoyed the meal. As they exchange looks, Sang-woo momentarily loses himself in her gaze, but the moment breaks when the food catches in his throat. Just as things start to heat up between them, Moyim arrives and Sang-woo awkwardly excuses himself to go get drinks. As he leaves, he can't stop thinking about Ryo's sudden change in behavior. Meanwhile, Moyim tells Ryo about her complicated relationship with her mother, who has been pressuring her into blind dates ever since her father passed away. Ryo admits that she hasn't been able to move on from her ex, and just then, Sang-woo returns, having forgotten his wallet. As he enters, he catches sight of Ryo's wedding photos on her phone, causing him a pang of sadness. The next day, the scene shifts to a temple where a group of women, including Sang-woo's mother, are seen praying intensely. One of them nearly faints after performing 108 bows, and her friends comment on the unnecessary strain she's putting on herself. She explains she's doing it to help her son pass his civil service exam, while Sang-woo's mom quietly looks troubled, something Ryo's mom notices. Later, we see Sang-woo meeting Ryo's dad, who invites him for drinks since the women have gone on a temple trip. Sang-woo, visibly tense, declines but promises to come next time. Back at the restaurant, some bloggers arrive to review the vintage-style decor, much to the delight of Ryo's dad. At the same time, Sang-woo is approached by Young, who asks if Ryo can work on their flagship project. However, Sang-woo declines, stating they no longer need her help since the building project she was working on is completed. Although Young agrees, he insists on throwing Ryo a farewell party, which Sang-woo reluctantly agrees to. At the party, Ryo asks for book recommendations from Lena, who suggests a novel about someone trying to fix their past mistakes. Sang-woo immediately protests, telling Ryo that thinking about the past is pointless, and everyone should focus on the future. He doesn't want Ryo getting stuck in old memories. The scene shifts again, showing Moyim visiting the park, hoping to see the little girl she's been curious about. Instead, she runs into Kang, who is searching for a 4-leaf clover. Moyim helps him, and together they find one, making Kang so happy that he impulsively grabs her hand. As soon as Kang realizes he's holding her hand, he quickly lets go, embarrassed. Moyim hands him the 4-leaf clover, and with a burst of joy, he runs off, leaving her standing there, curious about what just happened. Meanwhile, back with Sang-woo, Ryo approaches him with tea and offers, "I can make time for this project if you need me." Sang-woo responds, Weren't you supposed to be focusing on finding your dreams? You should do that instead, or people will think I held you back. Ryo, slightly hurt, says, I just wanted to help, but it's not like I'm ignoring my dreams. Sang-woo, staying distant, replies, then focus on them, and starts to walk away. Sensing something's off, Ryo asks, are you upset with me? Just as Sang-woo is about to raise his voice, an unexpected figure rushes in and hugs him from behind. It's Tano, his ex-girlfriend, calling him Hani and saying, it's been so long since we last met, hasn't it? The three of them sit down with Moim, who can't help but sneer, how shameless are you to show up here? Sang-woo, clearly uncomfortable, admits, your presence makes me uneasy. Tano, with a sly smile, replies, well, that's good, isn't it? It's revealed that Tano dumped Sang-woo for another guy, so her reappearance stirs up a lot of unresolved emotions. Tano, however, claims she's here as a potential client. She explains that the international home decor company, Fresco, collaborates with artists annually to create limited edition products. And this year, they want to design a coffee pot inspired by an architectural concept. Tano adds that they need architectural help to maintain the product's structural beauty. Moim, sensing the tension, quickly rejects the offer. But Tano bribes him with a valuable wedding gift, an expensive bowl worth millions. Caught off guard by the offer, Moim reluctantly agrees to help. After Tano leaves, Ryo asks Lena, did you know about his ex? Lena explains that her name is Tano. She's a year older than Sang-woo, and they dated for over a year. Their relationship was passionate, but ended badly. Ryo listens, clearly unsettled, as memories of Sang-woo and Tano's intense relationship resurface. Later, as Ryo is returning home, she spots an expensive car parked in front of her house, and to her shock, sees a couple kissing inside. She approaches them and asks them to take it somewhere else, only to realize it's Seoyoung in the car. Ryo is stunned but pretends not to have seen anything and walks away, feeling conflicted. Ryo continues to talk to Lena about the strange events, but suddenly they're interrupted as Seoyoung and Tano overhear their conversation. Embarrassed, Ryo quickly apologizes, but Tano, with a knowing smile, comments, oh, those were some great memories. When Tano recognizes Ryo, she's thrilled, saying, Sang-woo always talked about you. Sang-woo, flustered, tries to deny it. No, I didn't. Tano then asks for Ryo's help in convincing Sang-woo to assist with her project. Sang-woo, clearly torn, hesitates and asks for time to think. Tano invites everyone to her studio, and Moim enthusiastically urges Sang-woo to go along, leaving him with little choice but to agree. That evening, as Sang-woo heads home, he bumps into Ryo's dad, who's about to smoke. Noticing Sang-woo, Ryo's dad quickly hides the cigarette. The two share a drink, and Sang-woo asks, weren't you supposed to have quit smoking? Ryo's dad chuckles, don't tell anyone, and they laugh it off over drinks. The next day, Ryo storms into her brother's room to wake him up, but when he doesn't respond, she playfully jumps on the bed and starts hitting him. To her surprise, Seo pops out from under the blanket, startling her. Sang-woo, walking in at that exact moment, is just as shocked. Before anyone can explain, Daejin bursts into the room, yells, Mom! Dad! These two are doing something weird! And runs off. Panicked, Sang-woo chases after him but trips and twists his ankle on the table. At the hospital, the doctor reassures Sang-woo that it's just a minor injury, but Sang-woo feels more pain than expected, thinking it might be due to an old injury flaring up. Ryo, seeing his overreaction, teases him in front of her dad. He's such a crybaby. Don't pay attention to him. This sparks a playful argument between them. Ryo's dad, who was there as well, scolds her. Was it really necessary to hit him so hard? She laughs. It's not because of me. Meanwhile, Sang-woo's dad asks how this all happened, and we get a flashback of the previous night, showing that Sang-woo and Ryo's dad drank too much. Despite the hangover, Ryo's dad invites Sang-woo over for more drinks, mentioning that his wife isn't home, tempting him for another round. After a night of drinking, Seoyeon is invited by Ryo's dad to crash at Dongjin's room, despite Sang-woo's father warning him against it, knowing how Seoyeon behaves oddly after drinking. As they leave the hospital, Sang-woo has to head to his workshop, and Ryo sends her dad away, saying she has work to do. Once they're alone, she slyly takes Seoyeon's car keys from his pocket, saying, "Even though I didn't cause your injury, I feel responsible." Seoyeon demands the keys back, so she returns them. But he quickly changes his mind and asks her to drive him after all. Meanwhile, at a convenience store, Kang thanks Moyim for her help in finding the four-leaf clover and buys her favorite drink and candy as a token of appreciation. Curious, Moyim asks if the clover impressed the person it was meant for. Kang hesitates, revealing that he gave it to someone else who had helped him. Moyim teases him, saying he should have taken credit himself, but Kang firmly responds, "I don't lie," and rushes off, leaving her wondering if Kang understands anything about relationships. As Ryo drives, Sang-woo sits tensely beside her, nervously telling her not to touch certain buttons. But Ryo playfully does it on purpose. She tries to get him to relax and enjoy the ride, eventually dropping him off at Kang's studio. Upon seeing Sang-woo's condition, Tano asks what happened, and Ryo reassures her that it's nothing serious, just a minor injury. Tano, noticing Sang-woo's discomfort, holds his hand and leads him inside. Ryo, meanwhile, is mesmerized by the jars and pots scattered around the studio. Tano proudly explains that she makes sausages and pastes here, a skill passed down from her father, a food expert. She mentions needing a helping hand, and Sang-woo, sensing the situation, asks, "Is that why you invited us here?" Tano admits she likes multitasking, but Sang-woo firmly states he can't help. Ryo, however, is excited and joins in the food making, working alongside Tano and the other women, who find her enthusiasm endearing. While everyone's busy, Tano pulls Seoyeon aside and asks, "Have you dated anyone since we broke up?" Seoyeon hesitates before admitting he has, but quickly adds that he missed her. Tano confesses she missed him too, and Seoyeon questions her intentions, asking if she only wanted to collaborate professionally. Tano coyly responds that meeting him was part of the reason, but work takes priority. She shows him her pottery collection, which she recently exhibited in Vienna, and he's impressed. She encourages him to try making something, and as he starts working on a pot, Ryo watches from a distance. Jealousy flickers across her face as Tano steps in to help Seoyeon, holding his hands as they mold the clay together. Unsettled, Ryo accidentally knocks something over, catching their attention. Embarrassed, she pretends she was just looking for the bathroom, and Tano points her in the right direction. When Sang-woo steps outside, Ryo awkwardly apologizes, saying, "You two looked good together," indirectly hinting that Seoyeon should get back with his ex. Annoyed, Sang-woo snaps, "Don't interfere in other people's personal lives like that." He walks off, needing some fresh air, while the rest of the group arrives, explaining how their work was constantly delayed due to one issue after another. They all head back inside, and Tano, noticing the growing number of people, announces, "Looks like we have more workers now." She explains how they'll use a special ingredient, meiju, to make the doenjang sauce. Sensing something off, Moyim realizes why Seoyeon had stepped out earlier. He's been preoccupied with the memory of a recent night when he overheard Ryo confessing that she hasn't fully moved on from her past relationship. The thought of this lingers in his mind, making him uneasy. Later, Moyim, exhausted from a full day of work, orders food with the others when an emergency call comes in, sending them off to another location. Upon arriving at the house, they find a young girl lying unconscious on the floor. Moyim recognizes her as the same girl she met at the park earlier. With no one else home, she calls for paramedics and checks the girl's temperature. The girl, who introduces herself as Yand, suddenly faints. Back at the studio, Tano asks Ming to help move a heavy jar, but she insists on doing it herself. Ignoring Tano's warnings, Ryu struggles with the jar, only for it to slip and shatter on the ground, injuring herself in the process. Staring at the broken jar, she winces, realizing the consequences of her actions. The scene shifts as Ri accidentally causes damage, leaving her distressed. Sang-woo arrives and angrily reprimands her, warning that she could have seriously hurt herself. He demands to know why she's attempting tasks she can't handle. But Tani steps in to defend her, explaining that Ri was only trying to help. Tani then sends Ri off to change. Meanwhile, Kang and his colleague visit an old lady's tiny home for an interview. Her gratitude fills the air, but Kang is distracted by a phone call informing him that Yu isn't home. He rushes back in panic, only to hear from the helper that Yu disappeared while she briefly stepped out. Neighbors mentioned paramedics were seen at the house. Cut to Mayum, who has brought Yu to the hospital. The situation is serious. As Yu's treatment progresses, Mayum notices something in her hand, the very leaf she and Kong had searched for earlier. Realization strikes. Kong had meant to give this leaf to Yu all along. Just then, Kang arrives, running to his daughter's side, and as Yu regains consciousness, she grasps his hand saying, "Daddy, you're here." Ri, feeling guilty for causing trouble, returns to help, but the weather worsens as lightning flashes, followed by heavy rain. Ri suggests making a spicy dish, and soon everyone gets busy preparing food. Ming and the others, however, aren't thrilled about working. Despite this, the meal turns out delicious, though Sang-woo is nowhere to be found. He'll come when he's hungry, Turi assures, and they all enjoy the evening. Later, as Ri washes dishes, Tani approaches her, insisting she doesn't need to help. But Ri insists, feeling responsible for the earlier mishap. Tani jokes that Ri would have to pay 1,000,000 yen for her broken pot, but offers a deal. If Ri shares the recipe for the spicy dish, they can call it even. Ri begins to share, only to realize she made the dish on a whim, without any measurements. She admits she knows very little about cooking. The scene shifts to Mayum confronting Kong, scolding him for leaving such a young child alone. She returns the leaf she found with Yu, and Kong breaks down in tears. When Yu regains consciousness, she refuses to speak to Mayum, declaring, "I don't talk to people who scold my dad." Meanwhile, Ri notices scars on Tani's hands and learns they are from her dedication to pottery, a passion born from her upbringing. Ri is inspired by how Tani found her calling and succeeded through perseverance. Tani encourages Ri to pursue what she truly loves, sparking a moment of self-reflection. Later, Tani finds Sang-woo sitting alone. She tells him that when Ri mentioned they were once passionate about each other, she was wrong. The passion had only been one-sided. Tani had been far more invested in their relationship, which is why she ended it. Sang-woo, taken aback, tries to deflect, but Tani continues, revealing that she never told him about a broken jar because she had been jealous. Meanwhile, unable to sleep, Ri wanders outside and finds her sweater freshly washed. She realizes that Sang-woo had cleaned it as a silent apology for scolding her earlier. Touched, Ri smiles. Ri stumbles upon Sang-woo inspecting the jars. She teases him, asking if he's up because he skipped dinner. Curious, she asks how he removed the stain from her shirt, and he reveals he used rice and vinegar. They chat as Ri searches for an old jar said to contain century-old soy sauce, intrigued by its rumored strong aroma and deep color. To her surprise, Sang-woo begins helping her search, despite his recent anger. They eventually find the jar, and when Ri opens it, the soy sauce inside sparkles like the night sky. Mesmerized, she shares her excitement with Sang-woo, but he mistakenly believes she's thrilled about the sauce. In truth, she's found something more profound: her dream. She announces her desire to pursue cooking, and Sang-woo is delighted that she has found her passion. As Ri laughs, Sang-woo recalls Tani's words about how different he behaves around Ri. Watching her smile, He can no longer deny his feelings. In his heart, he realizes, I've been running from my feelings, but seeing her smile, I can't help but fall for her.